We've all had our moments of embarrassment. I know I certainly have. You probably have too. I feel like it's pretty inevitable. It's just kind of human nature to have our less than glamorous moments where we might feel a little bit embarrassed. Maybe you fell in front of a crowd of people, or maybe you were giving a speech and you completely forgot what to say. I can think of a ton of ways in which I've been embarrassed in the past. And when it comes to psychosis, I can think of a ton more. Even though psychosis is a psychological condition of which there's nothing to be ashamed of, a lot of people come out of psychosis, remember what happened, and feel embarrassment for the things that they went through in their episodes. Because the thing is, in a psychotic episode, the person experiencing it isn't completely in control of their actions, and they may do things that are completely out of character for them. A lot of things that, upon recovering, seem embarrassing. So let's talk about this all too common feeling that affects so many people post-psychosis. Let's talk about living with your actions and not feeling ashamed of them anymore. Before we get started, here's a disclaimer to say that I am not a mental health care professional and I am in no way qualified to give any advice, medical or otherwise. Who I am is simply a person with lived experience having severe mental illness who is just here to share with you the wisdom and insight I've gleaned along the way. Also, here's a trigger warning to say that the subject of psychosis in its very nature is a sensitive subject that can be difficult to talk about. So if at any point during this video I say anything that may be triggering or upsetting to you, you are more than welcome to leave the video. And finally, here's an announcement.
Heads up, I have merch! I recently launched a merch shop with fun clothes and other items made out of my own original designs. As an artist, it was fun to come up with art that expressed how I feel about psychosis advocacy and the light I try to bring to the darkness that psychosis creates. Despite the struggles that others and myself have faced, there is a lot of positivity to find in recovering from mental illness, and I hope people will feel positive when they wear my clothes. I've been fortunate enough to recover from psychosis, and I know that I'm incredibly lucky, but that doesn't mean I was okay. For a long time, I felt incredibly lonely without anyone to relate to, and until I found the psychosis community, I truly didn't think there was anyone like me. Now that I'm not alone, I want to extend that same welcome to others and let them know that it's okay to have mental illness, but that they don't have to struggle through it by themselves anymore. I hope I can make mental illness visible enough that people can find a community like I have, a place to belong where they can reach out, ask for help, and get the reprieve they need from mental illness.
So, I'm no stranger to psychosis. I've had a fair number of episodes, and a lot of the things I've done in those episodes are things that any normal person would be embarrassed by. I'm not really embarrassed anymore. And I used to feel very ashamed of certain things that a lot of people witnessed, but I've processed and worked through those things and I've come to accept my actions without shame. I got to a place where I recognized that I was sick, and I was sick with an illness that presented itself as not being able to take care of myself and not being able to make my own decisions with a sound mind. So yeah, it was an illness. It wasn't just that I was making bad decisions. It was these bad decisions are a symptom. They're a symptom that I can't control. This is something that's out of my hands. And recognizing that helped a lot in allowing me to not feel embarrassment anymore, to kind of move past the feelings of like, I'm personally responsible for streaking downtown in broad daylight. I'm not responsible for that because that was a symptom. Yeah, streaking downtown sounds pretty crazy, and it was, but that was something that came as a result of an illness. That wasn't me. But it took a really long time to get to the point that I could remember things that I had done and not completely cringe, like visibly, like physically cringe, like, ooh, I used to have such big reactions to my memories. I wished I could cauterize my memories because they were so bad and so hard to live with. So yeah, it actually did take several years before I could live with myself for what I had done. And it was a huge effort. It didn't happen overnight, and it was pretty hard. The thing is, when I came out of psychosis, I was remembering everything as if it was happening for the first time. I had no idea what was going on while I was in psychosis because psychosis had sort of tainted my reality. It's kind of like psychosis was this lens that was in front of me, and I saw the entire world through psychosis. Everything was altered, everything was distorted, and it didn't make much sense. So coming out of psychosis and looking back, I was seeing what really happened versus what I had thought was going on, and they were completely different things. Things that seemed rational in psychosis were batshit crazy outside of it. In psychosis, I had rational decisions to me. So I could think to myself, this logically is what anyone would do in this situation. And yeah, probably the things that I did would be rational if that situation were actually happening, but it wasn't happening. So these rational decisions I was making looked pretty fucking crazy. For instance, I jumped out of a window once, and thankfully it was a first-story window, so it wasn't a very far drop. But nonetheless, it seems kind of weird when a person just randomly jumps out of a window. Why would anyone just jump out of a window for no reason at all? I had good reason. I thought that a witch was after me, and this witch was in my mom's house, and I had to get the fuck out of my mom's house. So I jumped out of a window, and that was fairly rational. If you were being chased by a witch, would you jump out of a window? Maybe, maybe not, but you can probably see how in my mind that made sense, right? It just doesn't make sense to anyone else. And the things like that, like jumping out of a window, can be very embarrassing when other people witness it. People who don't understand where your mind is at or how you are making these decisions or your rationale around why that makes sense to anyone outside of your psychosis, which is only happening to you. It's pretty nonsensical. Like, it doesn't make sense. Made sense to me, but not to anyone else. So I would seem really weird, and I would say things that were weird that didn't make sense. I would do things that were weird that didn't make sense. And in my mind, I was perfectly sane. I was the most sane I had ever been. I was my best self. Like, I was so mentally stable, and the rest of the world was crazy. I was fine, they were crazy. Little did I know that was the anosognosia talking, and anosognosia is the symptom that causes you to lose awareness of your mental state. And because I had lost that awareness, I thought that I was just like the healthiest I'd ever been. Every decision I made, every action I took came from this place of genuinely confidently believing that I was okay. Now, I did a lot of things in psychosis that were embarrassing. And while I could go on and on and on about every individual action that was embarrassing, the truth of the matter is the most embarrassing thing was just being psychotic at all in front of people, because people saw me at my worst. People saw me in a way that I can't tell because I was going through it. And while I was in it, I didn't really know what I was like. And so people would tell me, you know, you did this, you said this, and it's creepy, honestly, because it doesn't sound like me. And they'll tell me the things I said, and I'm like, geez, man, I would never say that. So that in itself is probably the most embarrassing part, is just knowing that people saw me at my most vulnerable. People saw me when I was at the lowest point of my life, and they didn't know that I was psychotic. So they were just thinking, wow, Carolyn's acting really strange. She's being like really weird. She's changed. It's like kind of bizarre. Yeah, they saw me at my worst. No one wants to be seen at their worst. That is what was so embarrassing. Also, people would treat me differently because I was acting so strangely. And the thing is, when you are acting so strangely that it is very off-putting to other people, They will treat you like an infant. They will treat you like you are mentally challenged. They will treat you like you're not even human anymore. They'll treat you like an animal. Like, there are so many ways I was treated by other people that I can remember that were subhuman. Like, people treated me as if I had no mental capacity whatsoever. It's just that the thing is, while I'm acting like I don't, I'm still there to a degree, and I can tell how people treat me. I'm not stupid. I know when they're treating me like I'm less than. Like, for instance, when I was in the recovery phase and I had a flat affect, so I didn't show expression. And I had a logia, so I talked really slowly. I seemed dim-witted. And this girl that I knew was pretty condescending towards me. And I told her that I would really like to write a book. And she said, yeah, it's nice to have goals. And you know what? I am a very intelligent person. I know this about myself. That's not a brag. I'm a very intelligent person. And I am writing a book, actually. I've already written like over 100 pages of it, and it's still going, and I'm probably going to finish it, honestly. And I will have it edited by my sister, who's an editor, and I will have it published. So it's not that far out of reach that I would write a book. But when you have a flat affect and a logia, it doesn't really seem like you're capable of that. And people will let you know. Aside from the judgment from other people who don't understand psychosis, who don't know that you're in psychosis, who see it as some kind of like a character thing and not actually a mental condition, there's just the things that I've done, the isolated instances, aside from just being psychotic, the specific instances that live in me that make me cringe, that I've kind of gotten past but still remember as one of my less than fine moments. Those, they're hard to get through. Surprisingly, I've been able to get past the big things relatively easily, but the little things, they're kind of harder for me because those are just sheer, pure embarrassment and nothing else. The big things are attached to trauma, like the streaking in public thing was a very, very traumatic event for me, not just because it was embarrassing, but because at the time I was in a persecutory delusion that I was being chased by spies. And the only way to save my life was to get naked because then I'd be invisible. I didn't know at the time that I was publicly embarrassing myself. I was trying to save my life. And under that pressure, in that mindset that the only thing that would spare me would be to get naked, I wasn't thinking that this was an embarrassing thing to do. I was thinking, dear God, I need to save my life. That is not embarrassing. That is survival. People do crazy things for survival, and I know I did, so I can't really be embarrassed by public nudity, public humiliation. That was not something to be embarrassed of. That is something that I had to work through in therapy. It was really traumatic. But the little things, the little harmless things that don't hurt anyone are harder to live with because they just don't seem like me. Like, these are really out of character things that I would never say or do. And I don't identify with that. Like, it's weird to hear things that I did and be like, that doesn't sound like me at all. Why on earth would I have done that? And, to live with the fact that I did that. Like, for instance, when I was in the hospital and we had these reports, I guess. At the beginning of the day, you were supposed to write down a goal and some other things. And I think this was more intended for people that actually had like things that they could work on. When you're in psychosis, you can't really work on that. Like, the only thing you can really do is go on medication and let it peter off. People who are there for depression or something, they can work on, say, today I will write a list of gratitudes, or I will tell myself affirmations in the mirror. Well, my goal was to bark like a dog. That was my goal because that just seemed like the most effective thing I could do for my mental health. I don't know what I was thinking, honestly. And so at the end of the day, we were supposed to go around and tell everybody what our goal was and whether we had achieved the goal. And when it came to my turn, I just literally got up on the table and barked like a dog. Yeah. Things like that are really cringy, but they're also really harmless, and the only person they affect is me, because I'm sure while it may have seemed strange to everyone else in the hospital, they probably don't care. They don't care. I mean, maybe, yeah, they probably remember it as being something that they went through in the hospital, but does it affect them today? Probably not. That was like 10 years ago. I doubt anyone today is dwelling on it. Maybe they remember it in passing, but I doubt it's something they carry with them. I carried that with me for a really long time, and it affected me greatly. I was very embarrassed, but like I said, I've worked through my embarrassment and I don't feel embarrassed today. And yeah, it was hard to get there, but I did. The thing is, this embarrassment comes down to other people. I'm only embarrassed of the things I did in front of other people. I'm not embarrassed of the things that happened in private when I was psychotic. Things that I did by myself, like performing an exorcism on myself, don't embarrass me because I recognize that I was in a psychiatric emergency. So when I apply that thinking to being in front of other people, it helps. It helps to think when I was alone, I was in a psychiatric emergency, therefore there was nothing to be embarrassed of. When I was in front of people, I was in a psychiatric emergency, therefore there's nothing to be embarrassed of. If I can just remove the crowd from the memory and see this horrible thing that I went through that's actually really sad, I don't feel as embarrassed of it because it was really sad. Why should I be embarrassed of something that breaks my heart? I think back on myself back then and I feel really sad for that person. And I feel like it's tragic that I went through that. Like I think back and I have so much compassion for myself. And I think that if that were someone else, I would probably want to like wrap them up in a blanket and give them some tea and a hug. Like I would want to alleviate their suffering because it was absolute suffering. I don't feel that what I went through was something to be ashamed of because I was, like I said, sick, and anyone who's sick deserves to be treated. And I wasn't treated for a really long time. My longest episode was 2 years. That's sad. I mean, yeah, I feel bad for that person. That's really, really sad. Which also makes it easier for me to not care about the judgment from other people because what kind of a person would judge someone who was suffering? Now that's just shitty. So people like that girl who condescended me for wanting to write a book, fuck her. Fuck what she thinks. She had no compassion for a person who was sick. And so that is not someone's opinion that I care about. I honestly could care less. And you know what? I feel that way about her outside of Psychosis too. Like, I don't really like her to begin with. I never did. And so her opinion is not one that I've ever cared for anyway. So whoever judges a person in Psychosis has an opinion that I don't want to hear. I don't give a damn about, honestly. That is not a person that I'm going to waste my time and thinking on. The judgment that I got from other people is a reflection of them. Like if they were psychotic, I wouldn't treat them that way and I wouldn't look at them that way because I've interacted with people in Psychosis and I've never felt that way towards them. And of course, I'm biased because I've been through Psychosis. So obviously I have more empathy than other people. And obviously I also know the signs to look for. So I'm not just like someone who's completely dumbfounded by a person acting really strangely. But nonetheless, whether you know a person is in Psychosis or not, the judgment that you have towards them says a lot more about you than it says about me. Realizing that I didn't have to waste my time and energy caring about the opinions of people who were judgmental, people who were condescending, took a huge load off of me and cut through the embarrassment by like 75%. The perception of others was the most embarrassing thing, as I said. So casting away any like care for what other people perceived me as was a bulk of the work. I feel like most of the work was just letting go of caring for other people's opinions. That was a huge step for me. Another thing was just having the empathy for a person who was suffering and not so much seeing it as like myself, but as any other person. Like I have trouble with self-love and like positive self-talk and stuff like that. It has gotten a lot better, but like, let's be real, I think a lot of people do struggle with that. Now, when I could put that outside of myself and think of it as like, if I were to interact with someone who had just gone publicly streaking and didn't know that they weren't actually being chased by spies, I would again wrap them in a blanket, give them some tea, and hug them, because that's how they deserve to be treated. Now, if I thought of myself that way, I'd think, oh my God, they should be scolded. I don't know, but to put myself outside of my shoes and think, how would I treat someone that had been through that? It kind of allowed me to like separate myself from the experience and look at it objectively. And objectively, it was a terrible thing that happened to me. It was a horrifying event, and that deserves compassion. So I would say it was a long road to get to the point where I didn't have shame and embarrassment for the events that happened in Psychosis anymore. Honestly, I think that the final key to getting past the embarrassment was just time. Being farther and farther separated from my psychosis, the longer it took to like get past that, the better I felt in general. It didn't just help with the embarrassment, it helped with the pain, it helped with the trauma, the fear, all of the horrible things that I witnessed in my hallucinations or believed in my delusions. Time does heal everything, if not most wounds, and psychosis is absolutely something that I have healed from with time. It's a journey, but it's possible to get to that point. It's absolutely possible to get past the embarrassment of psychosis, because I know if it was possible for me, it's gotta be possible for other people. I lived with so much embarrassment. I mean, it's really not easy to come back from public nudity, trust me. But if I can get past it, you can too. So don't give up on the effort. If you yourself have been through psychosis and you struggle to live with the things that happened in that state, don't worry, it's possible, I promise you. Well, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I truly appreciate it. Today's video was a suggestion by MPXYZM2BY. Thank you so much for the awesome topic. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If anyone out there has a topic they'd like to suggest for a future video, you can let me know in the comment box below, or just let me know what you thought of this video, if you found it relatable, if you've struggled at all with this, or if you've overcome it yourself. And if you'd like to support my channel, you can like and subscribe. You can also support me in other ways by checking out my merch store or subscribing to my Patreon. There are links to both in the description box below. And I put out videos every Thursday/Friday, so if you're looking for more content, there's plenty soon to come. I'll see you all in the next one. Thanks. Bye.